Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, our politics panel on First Nations chiefs speaking out at the legislature. But first, a promise to hit the ground running.
It's important for not just New Democrats, it's important for all Canadians because we need a strong progressive party in the House of Commons that is in fact fighting for Canadians, that is holding the government accountable.
Heather McPherson seeking support from party members in Calgary. The Edmonton Strathcona MP is one of 5 candidates in the running for leadership of the federal NDP, an outcome that will be determined March 29th with online voting underway. And Heather McPherson joins us now. Ms. McPherson, good to see you. Thanks kindly for coming in to chat about your leadership bid.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Okay, well, we just heard you in the clip there about the need for a strong progressive party. What does progressive mean to you, and how will that shape the direction that you would take to rejuvenating your party?
Well, you know, the fact is that Canadians across the country are really struggling right now. You know, the cost of living is out of control. The housing crisis that we are facing across this country is affecting people in small and large communities from coast to coast. And without a strong New Democratic Party in the House of Commons, we don't have a voice for working class Canadians that is actually pushing the government to live up to the promises that they made to Canadians. Now, I'll give you a great example. The housing crisis that we see in every community. Mark Carney has delivered half of what he promised to deliver in terms of budget numbers on that. We're not in the House at the numbers we need to be able to hold him accountable. So for me, it's building back our party in a way that we elect more New Democrats, that we have more people in the House pushing the government.
Okay, so does that mean then you become more of a centrist party in adopting that progressive label?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it changes what we believe and what we push for. We've always been the party that pushes for working class Canadians, that fights for, labor rights to be enshrined in law. We are the party that will protect our healthcare system. We are the party that has pushed for, making life more affordable for working class Canadians. So we don't change what we believe as New Democrats, but we need to start talking to people about it in a way that they can hear us. We need to set a bigger table. We need to welcome more people into our party. I think most Canadians have the values, share the values that we have as New Democrats.
Okay, so how would you differentiate yourself then from Avi Lewis and the platform he brings to the table? He's considered by many to be the front runner based on that element of fundraising, his ability to raise $1.2 million.
We saw in the last election, the person who raised the most money was Pierre Poilievre, and he is not, in fact, the Prime Minister of this country right now. So what I would say is that I bring a strong ability to rebuild our party. I bring a strong ability to get more people elected, and that's important. I was elected in 2019. I've been a member of Parliament now for over 6 years, and I know how that system works. I've been door knocking across the country. I've door knocked from British Columbia to Newfoundland and Labrador, and I have spoken to New Democrats for a very long time, well before I put my name forward to be a leadership candidate. So I think one of the things you'll find in this race is that many of the candidates that are running, all 5 of us, believe in many of the same things. Real action on the climate, real protection for our healthcare system, real protection for working class Canadians. The difference is only one of us has a seat in the House of Commons and can get to work on day one, and only one of us actually has shown and has proven that she knows how to win.
Where does Alberta land on your radar when it comes to a rejuvenated NDP? And I ask that considering the dynamics playing out in our province right now around the prospect of a referendum on separation.
Well, I think it's important that we have strong Alberta voices in Ottawa. I am an extraordinarily proud Albertan. I am proud of what our province has done to build this country. But I am also an extraordinarily proud Canadian, and I know my Canada includes Alberta, includes a strong Alberta. So I do think that that's important. I also think that there is a real opportunity for us to grow the New Democratic Party across the prairies. That's where we're from. We are from the prairies. This is where our movement came from. I think this is this chance that we have to rebuild with that prairie pragmatism, to rebuild a party that speaks to people where they are. We've got to get out of the Vancouvers and the Torontos and talk to people across this country about things that matter to them. Cost of living, jobs, housing, healthcare, You know?
One thing that matters to a lot of Albertans is a pipeline to the West Coast. So how would you approach either support or opposition to the MOU that is now in place between the Alberta and the federal government?
Well, the problem I have with this MOU is I think it's very similar to some of the things that we saw with Stephen Harper. You know, Mark Carney thinks that he can shove projects through, and we know, as Canadians, we know that doesn't work. That doesn't happen. And what ends up happening is there are no jobs for Canadians, for Albertans. You know, if Mark Carney is traveling across the country, handing out goodies to different provinces with these build big projects, the one that's coming to Alberta will not result in more jobs, because I do not believe that we can get a pipeline built without a proponent, without support of Indigenous people across the country, and particularly the land title holders in British Columbia, and without meeting our environmental obligations. So I look at that project and I think maybe he's trying to appease Danielle Smith. I don't think that it will. In fact, I think it'll give Danielle Smith another cudgel to say, you know, Ottawa's in the way, or Ottawa's not working for us, which I don't think we need right now. I think it pits British Columbians against Albertans in a way that is very divisive at a national sovereignty moment. I would have preferred to see massive investment in a futures-facing economy that got Albertans working, you know, that got folks working in renewable energy, in building high-speed rail, in building our electrical grid up. You know, there are really exciting opportunities that we should be involved in.
But would you get behind a pipeline if it is that Alberta brings a proponent to the table, a private sector proponent that will build?
But Michael, we've heard nothing about a proponent coming forward, and you cannot build on unceded territory. You cannot build without meeting those obligations. We saw what happened under Harper. He got nothing done. You know, he wasn't able to build that infrastructure because when you push things through without going through the processes, you end up in court or you end up with blockages. You know, Rachel Notley, who I'm so proud has endorsed me, she was the one that was able to get things done. She had a real plan on the environment, and she also was able to get our product to Tidewater. So I think there is a way to do it. I just don't think that this MOU is the correct way, and I don't think Danielle Smith has any plan except perhaps to use Alberta dollars, Alberta taxpayer dollars, and I don't support that at all.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I do want to ask, because you, as you pointed out, you've been on the campaign trail for some time, but like right from the get-go. So what is your biggest takeaway from party members that will guide you if it is that you are to become leader and take your party beyond the dark days of the last election?
Well, you know, I think a lot of it, traveling across this country, speaking to New Democrats has been such an honor, like such an honor. People are excited to rebuild the party. They recognize why it's important that we have a strong progressive party in the House of Commons, especially as we see the current government take a swing to the right. One of the things that I've certainly learned is that we've got to work as much as we possibly can with our provincial cousins. You know, the success that we see within the provincial NDP is really strong, and we need to work together because we're fighting for the same things. You know, we're fighting for healthcare, we're fighting for protecting working class Canadians. So I think that's important. But I also think that across the country, what I have heard from people is hope. You know, yeah, we had a rough election in April, but there's a lot of opportunity to build right now. There's a lot of people that are interested in building, and that's what I want to do. You know, I want to travel across the country supporting the party as we rebuild. All
right, we're out of time. Leave it there. Heather McPherson, good to see you. Thank you kindly for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
From First Nations chiefs pressuring the province to end the separation debate to Alberta MP seeking to become leader of the federal NDP. And time now for tonight's politics panel. And joining us this evening, Sarah Elder, founder of the political fashion brand Madam Premier, host of the Briefing Note podcast and a former political staffer, and Barry Morishita, former leader of the Alberta Party and former mayor of Brooks. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with tension at the legislature Monday over an NDP motion for a non-confidence vote on the issue of separation that was quickly shut down by the government. It was a motion First Nations chiefs came to the legislature to support.
We are doing something that we will not stand for any of this talk of separation. We knew that the vote wouldn't pass. We knew what we were in for when we came to this legislature. We've seen it time and time again, the disrespect that the MLAs have for our people in those rooms.
First Nations leaders say a potential referendum question on separation infringes on treaty rights, which they say were signed with the Crown and not with Alberta. A First Nations delegation will also be at Buckingham Palace tomorrow to invite the King to the upcoming 150th anniversary of Treaty 6 and to remind him of the obligation to uphold treaty rights against separatist threats. Sarah, I'll start with you. The Assembly of Treaty Chiefs of Treaty 6, 7, and 8 recently passed their own vote of non-confidence in the UCP government. To what degree should the Smith government be sitting up and taking note of First Nations pushback?
I would imagine that the Smith government is absolutely taking note of that and of the events yesterday. But, I mean, to be honest, there is no separation referendum. There is no question. So all of this right now, to me, is discussion and dialogue, whether you like it, agree with it or not. It's happening. It can't, the process is playing out right now in the courts, both in the courts and in the legislature and with these different referendum questions. So all of this is a little bit premature to say, that there is a guaranteed outcome to any of this, because as far as I can tell, Alberta is still a province within Canada. This is all still playing out. And so I can understand as much as I can, the concern from the First Nations chiefs about this. I, too, am concerned as an Albertan and as a Canadian. But we, I think, just need to take down the tone a little bit and just take a breath and just, talk to each other a little bit more.
Barry, what value is there in the NDP attempting to push forward a vote of non-confidence? UCP shut it down within 13 minutes, and they called the motion a political stunt.
Well, I think the NDP are trying to find some traction that they can lead here in Alberta, that they can be kind of the go-to. Polls are showing them neck and neck, and quite frankly, Nahid Nenshi hasn't kind of set himself apart. He hasn't brought some focus to his leadership. So I think they're looking for things like that. And I think they're trying to take advantage of Premier Smith's kind of dichotomy of her dialogue. On one place, she says, they're going to help with the language, make it constitutional. And another one, she says she knows it's unconstitutional. So, I think they're trying to take advantage of that. Sarah brings up a good point that there's a lot of politics and speculation, and everybody's trying to gain a little edge from this. I think the NDP actually have an opportunity here during this part of the debate to show their leadership here in Alberta, but I don't think the tactics of Godshow are going to serve them long term. You might make it a headline on the news tonight, but I don't think long-term Albertans are going to really be attracted to that.
Sarah, outside the political sphere, Treaty 6 leadership taking concerns directly to the King at Buckingham Palace tomorrow. How might that change this whole dialogue around separation and a possible referendum question?
Well, I mean, the treaties were signed with the Crown, so that is the other signatory in this situation. However, I think we've seen a reluctantness on behalf of King Charles to engage on this issue directly. Obviously, everything that he does is tries to be more than arm's length from anything political. So him coming and speaking to the House of Commons, for example, that might be as much as we get. It might be as much as the chiefs get without, a firm declaration of something, because I would imagine that his talking points are going to be a lot like the ones that I just gave, which are that this process will play out and that nothing has happened and, they respect treaties and all of these other things. But, it could just end up being that the likelihood of the separation referendum completely failing. It seems like they're having a really hard time gathering the signatures needed. So again, all of this in terms of talking about a predetermined outcome are premature because the processes haven't played out. Should they have even started is another question, and that's not the one that we're discussing right now.
All right. Next up, we heard from Alberta MP Heather McPherson off the top on her bid to become leader of the federal NDP now that online voting is underway and the outcome is to be known by the end of the month. Barry, she's the lone elected member of Parliament in this race. How much of a difference do you expect that experience to make when it comes to party members picking their next leader?
Well, I think it should make a difference. I think one of the problems we have in our system is we don't grow people into it. People appear and then, kind of flame out. I think the NDP, and I've been impressed with Heather's campaign and kind of her growth during the leadership campaign. I think she'd be a strong spokesperson for them. So I think having a seat in the House of Commons is extremely important. We saw how that affected it locally here when Naheed became the leader and had to wait several months before he had his opportunity. So I think it tactically, strategically, it makes sense to that's an advantage for her, and we'll see how it plays out in the actual vote.
Sarah, fundraising tallies put Avi Lewis out front at roughly $1.2 million. Heather McPherson in second. I believe it's roughly half of that amount. How predictive is fundraising when it comes to the outcome of leadership races?
It's one metric. It's not necessarily the metric, and depends. I think momentum and messaging are ultimately more important, in my opinion. And I have to say, listening to Heather McPherson's comments, talking about fighting for the working class, fighting with their cousin provincial political parties for the things that they both believe in. That really leaves me asking, what is it they actually believe in? She was very non-committal on answering, giving a specific yes or no answer on a pipeline. Both her and Nenshi, if they're cousins, then what is the position? This is an amazing opportunity for any party running against a government or a political party, an NDP provincial political party, because you're saying your cousins that you're aligned in your priorities, that your messaging, all of these things, your values are aligned. I'm sorry, but the federal NDP is unelectable with their current raft of parties or policies. And so it's provincial parties that are winning. It's the federal NDP that should be taking a page from their book, not the other way around.
All right. Time for us to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, the Prime Minister taking heat for not attending a House of Commons debate on conflict in the Middle East. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. MPs took their seats in the House of Commons last night to debate the war in Iran, and it was without the Prime Minister.
In this time of crisis, Canadians deserve to know where the Prime Minister stands. Indeed, they deserve to know where the Prime Minister is.
In the recent military strikes carried out by the United States and Israel, we were not consulted in advance about these operations, and we have no intention of joining them.
With the Prime Minister's absence, opposition parties were left to question the government's position on the Middle East conflict. Mark Carney has been criticized over a series of shifting statements about the war since it started last month. The Foreign Affairs Minister says Canada condemns attacks on civilians and that international law must be respected. Sarah, how warranted is the opposition in calling out the PM for not taking part last night? Should this be considered? Mark Carney hiding from debate?
Absolutely. This is something that is very close and a very personal issue for me. My husband is originally from Iran. We have a lot of extended family still in Iran. And I myself am a dual citizen of both Canada and Iran. So I speak from the heart, and I speak from a place of actually understanding what's going on in a way that most people don't. I'm really disappointed that the Prime Minister wasn't there. His position has changed numerous times between both him and Anita Anand, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. And I find that to be incredibly disappointing and frustrating, because I can tell you what the Persian Canadian community wants right now, and that is that they want the support of the Canadian government in standing by them at this very critical time in the hope of actually seeing change come to the Iranian regime. Because for the last 47 years, the people of Iran have been oppressed by a theocratic dictatorship that has taken absolutely no mercy in torturing its own citizens, up until even including in January, when estimates between 30 to 40,000 people were slaughtered by their own government simply for the right to protest. Iranians have been dying for decades, and the Prime Minister should do the right thing and get onto the side of the people of Iran and not the regime.
Barry, the Blockhouse leader said Monday the PM's absence reflects a general lack of interest in Parliament since becoming Prime Minister last year. How much of a point is to be made in that regard?
Well, I think Prime Minister Carney has to be careful that what the accusations being tossed his way don't stick to him. I think it's a difficult thing to deal with a president of the U.S. In this particular situation, because he is trying to walk a tightrope when it comes to the messaging that is perceived internationally. I certainly agree with Sarah that Canada has always been on the side of a regime change and wanted to get rid of this regime that's in Iran at this point. So it kind of baffles me a little bit why he can't be a bit more consistent on that regard. But I think he does have to be careful. He can't appear to be disinterested in these things, but he also has to make sure that he's not getting on the wrong side of a president who seems to toss around economic bombs at a time that's when Canada can least afford to have them tossed their way. So it's a tough situation to be in, but he does have the value system that he purports to have, and I think he'd be well served by sticking to those.
And Sarah, to pick up on your earlier points, PM in the House for this debate or not, how necessary was the addition of this conversation on the Middle East conflict in the first place? What do you see it being needed for? What would it accomplish?
You know, I think that this was really just kind of performatory in terms of, giving the appearance of having MPs weigh in on this when, the decisions aren't made in the House of Commons on this. They're coming from the Prime Minister. That's the issue. The Prime Minister's messaging and that of his ministers has been extremely inconsistent, from being apparently at one point supportive when he was in Australia, I believe it was, to, even going as far as contemplating Canada becoming involved. And I have to say, that really resonated with me. And again, that really resonated, I think, with a lot of people in the Persian community, because either you're on the side of a regime that has for 47 years systematically targeted its own citizens in every single way. I can't even begin for people to understand. For the crime of being gay in Tehran or in Iran, you will be hung up by a crane publicly. Is that what we are saying, in taking a hands-off approach to this conflict? Are we saying that we're actually okay with that happening in and around the world? I guess if it's just about economics, but I really appreciate the moral clarity from Pierre Poilievre, and this has changed my political views, my political allegiances, like nothing else has. It's really, really solidified what my political position is, because I absolutely want consistent, clear messaging from political leadership in Canada, and the Prime Minister is not demonstrating it.
Okay, we're out of time. We have to leave it there. Great to see you both. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Michael.
Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about farmers and grocery store owners bracing for cost increases as the price of oil rises due to war in the Middle East. Major writes, and you thought groceries were expensive now. So he says, as a Canadian, I'm so tired of being affected by American wars. We should be building our own refineries, and using the oil we produce might keep Alberta happy. DC thinks, very short-sighted thinking. We don't do anything to mitigate problems like these, even though we knew it was coming. And Toby says, grocery chains looking for another reason to profiteer at Canadians' expense. Prices will not go down when this emergency passes. Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. Coming up tomorrow, federal NDP leadership candidate Avi Lewis on reviving party fortunes in the wake of the last federal election and how Alberta fits into that picture. That's on Wednesday. Until then, have a great evening, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.